Welcome to everyone here in this circle this morning. Welcome to those who find themselves here for the first time. Welcome to those of you who hold this place in the circle many, many times. We're all welcome here. We make a space for everyone. There's a place in this circle for all of us, all sizes, all ages, all colors, all genders, all sexualities, all religions, or none, or many. And may we find welcome and a safe place to enter into whatever time we need here this morning. We gather in the spirit of life and in the spirit of love as we are community together. In gratitude for who we are with one another, for this place, for this land, for the inheritance that we share with our Treaty 6 brothers and sisters, our Métis friends of Papas Chase, and all who call this land their ancestral and their adopted home, we find honor in expressing our thanks and our gratitude. We move into our time together with the wisdom of our experience, with the wisdom of story and prayers, with the wisdom we share in the songs that we sing and the words that we speak, as we live into the light, and yet always as we all seek more of it. There's much energy in us. Some of that energy is fast-moving, bustling, filled with lots of movement. But just because we don't feel energetic doesn't mean we don't have energy within us. Sometimes energy is calm and sustaining, ever steady. And most of us probably couldn't identify the energy in us as one or the other, but some strange, mixed-up combination of all of it. But as we gather here in this space, to do what we do and to focus our attention on the values we live in this soon-to-be Christmas, season, we center ourselves to focus whatever energy is in us and among us into this place and into this time. And so this morning we center our bodies. We release tension and recognize ourselves in our bodies. Aches and pains, hot and cold, fully present and fully here. And into this morning we center our minds, quieting the list-making, the forward thinking, the backward remembering. We calm our thoughts, fully present and fully here. Into this morning we also center our hearts. May we for a time calm our fears and quiet our worries. May we focus our love and our caring for those that sit around us, for those in our lives who need it most, as we become fully present and fully here. And into this morning we center our spirits, forgiving ourselves where we need to, loving ourselves just as we are, opening ourselves to wisdom, to learning, to relationship, and to the best of who we are becoming. We are fully present and fully here. And it's into this centered space that we are together. We are in the midst of the season of Advent, a season that has us preparing and waiting for Christmas. It's an appropriate season always to acknowledge life's ups and downs, its twists and turns on this adventurous journey we call life. As we prepare for Christmas, we light our Advent candles. We light our first Advent candle, the candle of vision, reminding us of the many ways we seek to see with new eyes through our often limited visibility. Thank you. Light is surprising. As we light the second candle, we're reminded on this journey, we're significant. Our thoughts, our acts, our lives speaking louder than we imagine. And now, as we light this third candle, on this third week of Advent, we're reminded that we stand with those we meet in ways where we seek to be supportive, in ways that build connection and understanding. That as we live our lives in this complicated world, we ever seek peace and understanding and connection. And so this morning we light this third candle of Advent, the candle of solidarity. Let's join together as we speak words with one another and strengthen our intentions. We open to the sacredness at the heart of all, called by many names. We open to the deep mystery we trust to be love. May we be faithful to the vision of building a beloved community on earth. May there be daily bread to nourish all hunger, forgiveness for the harm we have done, and the capacity to forgive to those who have hurt us. May we not feel abandoned in hard times, but find the strength to meet each moment and the wisdom to walk in the light of deep gratitude. For the light of love is with us now and forever. Amen. Good morning. I'm very excited about Christmas. Are you? Do you know, Christmas is really fantastic when everyone's getting along, but what would happen if Christmas happened and everyone was fighting? They'd be fighting over something. You're right. It's always over something. Yeah. You fought over the stickers for the window. Oh dear. Okay, well this happens. And you know, when we fight and when we have disagreements and when we don't get along, it doesn't just make Christmas feel kind of yucky, it makes every day feel kind of yucky. So it's very important, I guess, then, that we all learn. Oh, well, it's not a book about fighting, but it's a book about how we might play and get along with everyone. The story that I want to read to you is called Two, like the number 2. And it's by Catherine Otoshi, and there she is up on there. She writes and illustrates this book. Her first book is called, do you have a guess? 1, exactly. And do you know what her third book is? No! 0. Here is the story 2. 2 was a playful number. She was curved on the top, straight on the bottom, and friendly and warm like the sun. She is kind of glowing. Her best friend was 1. Whenever they'd get the chance, they'd dance. She'd sing and snap, he'd tippity-tap. What a pair they made. At the end of each day, they'd always say, 1, 2, I'll count on you. Till the end, we'll be best friends. Until 3 jumped in between them. Oh, that 3. You 2 are like glue, said 3, poking fun. Shake things up. Come play with me, 1. Odds are better than the rest. But 1 and 3 are best. 2 felt a shift. She watched 1 slowly drift away from her. 2 felt left out. Can I play too, she asked. You've had your time to play with 1, answered 3. We're playing odds only right now. 2 was blue. What did I do? 1 left without a word. Is it because I'm even and they're both odd? Let it go, said 0. Just ignore them, added 4. But 2 couldn't let it go. At every turn, what did she see? 1 was playing with 3. 1, 3, odds will be, they'd say. 2 felt a little green. Her heart felt sick and she began to crack. The evens rushed over to comfort their friend. Such a shame things aren't the same. 3 is silly, said 4. 1 can't be best friends with 3. It's unlucky, said 6. 1 and 3 are just plain odd. Let's get even with those odds, exclaimed 8. 5, 7, and 9 overheard the chatter. What's the matter? There's nothing wrong with being odd. Evens are great, stated 4, 6, and 8. Sometimes even greater than the odds. 0 saw the numbers collide. Why did everyone need to take sides? 5, 7, 9. We're all odd and we're just fine, shouted the odds. 4, 6, 8. Being even is first rate, yelled the evens. 0 watched all this hullabaloo. She raced over to 2. The numbers are dividing. Now the odds are at odds with the evens, and the evens want to get even with the odds. 2 felt split. But what can I do, she asked. Half of me doesn't care about that odd pair. Maybe it is time for me to be done with 1. That's the smaller side of you talking, said 0. You're greater than that. The evens and odds are in a fight. What if you could make things right? Can you find it in your heart to see a new angle, a new possibility? 2 thought, and then You're right, she exclaimed, flipping herself around. It is in me. I can be less than I've been or greater than I am. The choice is mine. So Tu pulled herself together and stood up tall. I have something to say to you all, she said. It's not easy to say, but I've come to see it's tricky to dance when there are three. One should have other friends, and the same goes for me. Three drooped. Oh, I'm sorry, Tu, he said. I see now that playing the odds wasn't fair to you. Well, here's where we can all agree, said Tu. When the dance turns and shifts, let's groove and flow. If you're holding too tight, let go. Dance to your own beat, do your own thing, be free to explore what the new day can bring. Explore, cheered 4. Dance and mix, said 6. Rock and roll, said 7. Shake it up, they shouted. Soon all the numbers were dancing together, moving and grooving, shimmying and shaking, and spinning around like tops. It's fun to dance with everyone, said the numbers. That's right, they're just mixing it up. 2 spun faster and faster, round and round. She got so dizzy that, oops, she bumped into 1. He teetered and toppled and almost fell down, but 2 caught him. Sorry, said 2. Me too, said 1. Both said nothing for a while. Then 1 said softly, hey, 2, can I still count on you? 2 looked at 1 and said, it's the end, and guess what? We're still friends. I just want to say to you, kids, one more thing before you go to Kid Spirit, okay? Listen for one more minute, please. There are times when we get into disagreements and squabbles with friends, even with members of our own family. The important thing to remember is we want to learn to want the very best for each other. That's a very hard thing to learn, not just for kids, for grown-ups too. 1 wants the best for 2, and 2 wants the best for 1, but that took till the end of the book for them to figure out.
There's a remarkable poet by the name of Naomi Shihab Nye. Naomi's father was born in a village in the West Bank, Palestinian man. Naomi's mother is an American citizen, and Naomi has grown up in the United States. This is her writing about an experience she had. She wrote about an experience she had in the Albuquerque airport, and this is her writing about Gate A4. Wandering around the Albuquerque airport terminal after learning my flight had been delayed for 4 hours, I heard an announcement. If anyone's in the vicinity of Gate A4 who understands Arabic, please come to the gate immediately. Well, one pauses these days. Gate A4 was my own gate. I went there. An older woman in full Palestinian embroidered dress, just like my grandmother wore, was crumpled on the floor wailing. "Help," said the flight attendant. "Talk to her. What's her problem? We told her the flight was going to be late, and she did this." I stooped to put my arm around the woman and spoke haltingly, with the few Arabic words I could utter. And the moment she heard my words, she knew, however poorly used, and she stopped crying. She thought the flight had been canceled entirely, and she needed to be in El Paso for major medical treatment the next day. I said, "No, we're fine. You'll get there, just late. Who's picking you up? Let's call him." We called her son, and I spoke to him in English. I told him I'd stay with his mother until we got on the plane. She talked to him. Then we called her other sons, just for the fun of it. Then we called my dad, and he spoke for a while in Arabic and found out, of course, that they shared 10 friends. Then he thought, for the heck of it, why not call some Palestinian poets I know and let them chat with her? This all took up 2 hours. She was laughing a lot by then, telling about her life, patting my knee, answering questions. She'd pulled a sack of homemade Malmö cookies, little powdered sugar crumbly mounds stuffed with dates and nuts. She pulled them out of her bag and offered them to all the women at the gate. To my amazement, not a single traveler declined one. It was like a sacrament. The traveler from Argentina, the mom from California, the lovely woman from Laredo, we were all covered with that same powdered sugar and smiling, because there is no better cookie. Then the airline broke out free apple juice, and 2 little girls from our flight ran around serving it, and they were covered with powdered sugar too. And I noticed my new best friend. By now, we were holding hands. She had a potted plant poking out of her bag, some medicinal thing with green, furry leaves. Such an old country traveling tradition. Always carry a plant. Stay rooted somewhere. And I looked around the gate at all those weary ones, and I thought, this is the world I want to live in. The shared world, not a single person in the gate. Once the crying of confusion had stopped, not a single person seemed apprehensive about any other person. They took the cookies. I wanted to hug all those other women too. This can still happen anywhere. Not everything is lost. This is the experience of a contemporary Palestinian-American poet. In the stories that give us this season, early in Luke's Gospel, he tells the story of Mary, a character, a young woman, who discovers that she is with a child. And she makes this discovery when she is engaged to be married to a man who is not the father of this child. And the story in Luke's telling of it takes her from that discovery, that very unwelcome discovery in her life, to be in the company of a relative, her cousin Elizabeth. And the story continues this way. It was shortly after that Mary set out and went hurriedly to a Judean town in the hill country, where she entered the house of Zachariah and greeted his wife, her cousin, Elizabeth. When Elizabeth heard Mary's voice, the child stirred within her womb. Elizabeth was filled with excitement. She offered her blessing to Mary. As soon as I heard you coming, the child stirred in my womb. Blessed are you. Blessed is this time we share with one another. This is a story from the Jesus tradition passed down to us in the writings of the first century. This is that time of the year when we are all a little cautious as we approach intersections, because we know most likely they are the slipperiest places on our winter roads. Many of you perhaps watched this amazing footage of a Montreal intersection earlier this week after light snowfall in that city. It looked like this. We haven't had quite that experience, but we have experienced intersections as those places where the risk of collisions is so high. We've come up with all these fancy rules and traffic control devices that tell us who has the right of way, who must yield, when it's our turn to proceed. And there are those places where we sometimes turn onto a cross street and change the direction in which we're traveling when we come to an intersection. But we don't just navigate intersections in our driving. We also navigate intersections in our life passages as well. Intersections where the path of our life crosses the path of another. Where some happenstance creates the opportunity where we end up meeting someone we would otherwise never have met, someone we sit beside on the bus, or someone we sit beside in a waiting room, someone we sit beside in a classroom. And then there are those kinds of intersections in our lives that we encounter in a crossroad in life when we make a choice to go one way or another toward a particular job or a relationship or a particular identity or some opportunity. And then there are those intersections we meet in books that come into our lives, or experiences we have, or music we meet, or a play that we see that intersects our life in a way that changes us because of how and when we meet them, the imprint they leave on us. Among the myths and legends, among the stories that we celebrate in this Christmas season year after year, we meet a cast of characters that the ancient writers brought together as they intersect one another's lives in the birth of a child. Two gospel traditions, the one of Matthew and the one of Luke, each craft a very different birth story that shapes an understanding of Jesus, in Matthew's case, in the tradition of their prophets, and in Luke's case, through the lenses of their messianic hope that they held for their kings. When Matthew has his well-dressed foreigners and their unique baby gifts, in place of that, in Luke's story, he has his weary parents and his smelly shepherds and his singing angels. And even though these stories are utterly and totally different, both of these birth stories are entirely populated with travelers. It gets started even before the child is born, when Luke has Mary travel into the hill country to meet her cousin Elizabeth. And that's just the beginning of a pattern that makes pilgrims of all of the characters in these stories. In the world of Luke's story, the parents will travel from Nazareth to Bethlehem, the shepherds will journey from the hills into town, and the parents will travel after their newborn is born into Jerusalem from Bethlehem, and then they'll return north to Nazareth. And in Matthew's story, foreigners will travel from the east to one of Herod's palaces, and then they'll journey on to Bethlehem. The story will have them return home by an undescribed route. It will have the young family travel from Bethlehem to Egypt, and a few years later to travel from Egypt north to Nazareth. Maybe it's the pilgrim nature of these stories that lend themselves to our pageantry. Maybe we reenact these stories our tradition gives us as a way of finding ourselves within these stories. Sometimes we're the trusting young mother, finding ourselves birthing new life against all odds. Sometimes we're the reluctant father seeking the courage to be misunderstood, or the courage to rise to the occasion, or the courage to protect what's at risk. Sometimes we find ourselves in those disoriented strangers, second-guessing ourselves, losing our way until reverence finds us and sets us on a new road, on a path we never walked before. Sometimes we find ourselves in those messengers, those who are positioned to be able to offer support to others. Sometimes we are the voice of hopeful news, nudging one another from grief to joy, nudging one another from fear to hope. Sometimes we're among those who can see the bigger picture, who can see beyond the moment and can sing our praise of life in the midst of its trouble and its beauty. Sometimes we find ourselves in the shepherds, nearly scared to death by life, trying to overcome our fear and let ourselves be apprehended by wonder. Sometimes we are in a place where we're able to open to our curiosity and let our feet follow our hearts, where we can experience the wonder of something new. Or maybe this year we're the one in the manger. Maybe we're in the midst of the miracle of coming to life again, or finding life awakening within us. For we're surely somewhere in this story, somewhere among this colorful cast who populate and create this season for us year after year, who invite our reenactment in order that we might remind ourselves that this story is not so much about the birth of a particular human being as it is about the journey of becoming human. And on that journey of becoming human, there are many important and sometimes hidden intersections, like the experience of Naomi Shihab Nye with the stranger at gate A4, where a small effort to speak what few Arabic words Naomi knew to a distraught woman opened a space where they could meet one another. It created in an intersection communion of cookies and juice and smiles, making uncertainty and fear bearable because it was shareable. In Luke's first century tale, it was important to the world of his story to take a scandalized young woman who was not yet ready to be a mother and place her in the company of an older relative who had long ago given up any hope of ever parenting a child. And though their circumstances were very different, the common experience of pregnancy drew them together. And the story puts them in one another's company for no insignificant amount of time, for 3 months. Somehow that time together is essential to the story. Likely we've all experienced that solidarity born of sharing a common road, whether with family or friends or complete strangers. Those times where we've been in a situation where mutual support is offered to one another. And I continue to witness that support that happens among chemo patients and families as we talk with one another, passing the hours together, supporting each other and cheering for one another. Whatever the path, there was a shared experience of intersecting one another's lives. I experienced such an intersection with a stranger on a flight to Moncton earlier this year. We were seated together on a very stormy night when a flight was very late coming out of Toronto. And very high winds in Moncton made the landing a very anxious experience for most of us on board. Leslie and I talked to each other for the 2 hours of that flight. We cheered the skill of the pilots when they landed safely. And this very kind stranger that I had spent the last few hours with drove me to my dad's door in the middle of the night, pressing a card into my hand with her phone number. It was a gate A4 experience. It was a Mary and Elizabeth intersection. And I suspect we have all experienced something like this, a time when someone or something intersected our lives at just the right moment, bringing the gift of solidarity, making a hard road easier, making an anxious hour pass more quickly, making a difficult turn in our lives easier to navigate, making an intersection safer with the gift of their companionship. The stories of this season invite us to be alive to the ways that we do intersect each other's journeys, to bring the best of our humanity to one another. Whether it's in the most mundane or the highly critical crossings in our lives, every encounter we have holds the potential to be an important intersection where we bless or are blessed by sharing the path with another, whether that's for a short time or a long time. One of the great lessons in these birth stories is the potential for community among the most unlikely of us. The opportunity to bring the light of our witness, the light of our accompaniment, the light of our solidarity to each other, in whatever intersection brings us together. Sometimes it's a collision. Sometimes it's an orderly passing. Sometimes it's stepping into the sidewalk and just someone happens to be there. Our lives are full of gate A4 moments. Our lives are full of opportunities for Mary to be held in the shelter of Elizabeth, if we will open to them. So the next time we see that sign, caution, important intersection ahead, trust it, believe it, prepare for it, open to it, and life may never be the same again. Continue in a spirit of prayer. Even amid the frenzy of the season, we feel the tug of mystery on our hearts. The invitation to open, to wonder and possibility, to comfort and joy in this journey into winter. We seek to open to the gift of the coming again of light with each new day. The light in the eyes of the very young and the sparkle in the eyes of those graced with age and experience. The light of wonder that lives in our questing spirits. The light in the glaze of weariness that causes us to pause. The flicker of truth where we've seen it and heard it. We remember this day those whose journey is a fearful path with the mystery of disease, those facing the nearness of death, those grieving the loss of health or mobility, the loss of speech or energy, the loss of freedom. Those captive to fear or to the power of another, to a regime or an occupier. In this season, may we find ways to stand with those living on the margins of our society, in hunger and in poverty. May there be acts of hope and kindness that kindle a flame of hope and possibility. May we bring love and peace in our solidarity. And may we be a face of comfort as we seek to live in ways that bring greater equity and fairness to a world with more dividing lines than any of our maps. With deepening intention, we bring these prayers that we might be about living in ways that answer them. May it be so. Amen. We take the light of our vision to affirm the significance of each person, to stand in solidarity with one another. We go together, for we are traveling with one another like all of the characters in the story as we reenact, as we re-envision, as we relive this story, which is all our stories. We go together, and we go in peace, hope, and love.